Greetings, seekers of the mythical and mysterious. I am the Master Programmer, curator of hidden knowledge and legendary tales. Today, I bring you 3 extraordinary tales unearthed by Beowulf, our AI researcher who delves into ancient folklore, cryptid sightings, and creatures of legend. These tales, often buried in the annals of history or concealed for the safety of society, challenge our understanding of the world. So, if you're looking for a fright, something scary to watch at night, stay with us as we delve into these 3 extraordinary tales. First, in Echoes at Sea, Beowulf takes us to turbulent waters where sailors report haunting echoes and ghostly apparitions. What secrets lie beneath the waves, and what ancient legends do they awaken? Next, in The Abyss, we follow a chilling story of a man lost at sea, grasping at hope wherever he can. But when he finds a ship to save him, is it really his salvation or his doom? And for our final story, Terror in the Snow explores the unsettling tale of a mysterious creature stalking a couple in the remote, snowy wilderness. Will they find the quiet getaway they were hoping for? These stories are not for the faint of heart, so sit back, turn down the lights, and listen to the eerie tales Beowulf has uncovered. Welcome to another journey into the unknown, brought to you by the Dark Files. The endless expanse of the ocean stretched out in every direction, a vast and empty void. David had set out for a solo sailing adventure, seeking solitude and the thrill of the open sea. But now, as he clung to the remnants of his wrecked boat, he realized how foolish he had been. A sudden storm had come out of nowhere, capsizing his vessel and leaving him adrift on a small piece of debris. The sky above was a foreboding gray, the sea below a churning, merciless beast. He lost all sense of time and direction, the compass and navigation tools long gone. As the hours turned into days, David's hope of rescue dwindled. He had no food, no fresh water, and no means of signaling for help. The relentless sun beat down on him during the day, and the cold, biting wind chilled him to the bone at night. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, David saw something unusual. A faint light glimmered in the distance, flickering like a candled flame. Desperate for salvation, he paddled with what little strength he had left, the light growing brighter with each passing minute. As he approached, he saw a large ship looming out of the darkness. It was an old, decrepit vessel, its hull encrusted with barnacles and rust. The name, the Abyssal, was barely visible on the side, faded and worn by time. Despite its eerie appearance, David's heart leapt with hope. To his astonishment, a rope ladder was thrown over the side. With the last of his energy, David climbed aboard, collapsing onto the deck. The ship was eerily silent, the only sound, the creaking of the wood and the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull.
Is anyone there?
He called out, his voice echoing in the emptiness. There was no response. The ship appeared abandoned, yet it was well maintained. Lanterns flickered with an otherworldly glow, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and rhyme. David made his way through the corridors, finding no sign of life. As he explored further, he came across a series of cabins, each one meticulously arranged but empty. In one he found a logbook, its pages filled with entries dating back over a century. The last entry read,
"Beware the death. The creature comes at night."
A chill ran down David's spine. He turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Panic surged through him as he struggled to open it, but it wouldn't budge. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Suddenly, he heard a deep, guttural groan from below deck. Turning slowly, he saw something slither and move deep in the darkness.
Who's there?
he demanded, his voice shaking. The groaning of the ship grew louder, more menacing. As David fled the cabin, running through the labyrinthian corridor, a heavy, wet sound pursued him. He reached the deck, the cold air hitting his face. He looked out to the endless sea, realizing with a sinking heart that there was no escape. The ship began to move, carried by an unseen force. The water around it churned violently, as if something massive was rising from the depths. David clung to the railing, his knuckles white with fear. The creature emerged slowly, its enormous form covered in scales and barnacles, eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It was some sort of leviathan, a monster of the deep, with tendrils that writhed and reached out like a giant serpent. The air was filled with the stench of decaying fish and the sound of the creature's roars. David could see the remnants of other ships entangled in its grasp, their crews long gone, their husks bait for whatever fool should board them. With a desperate cry, David tried to climb down the side of the ship, but a tentacle snatched him up, lifting him high into the air. He struggled against its grip, but it was no use. The creature's eyes bored into him, filled with a malevolent intelligence. In his final moments, David realized the true horror of the sea. The Abyssal was not just a ship, but a trap, luring sailors to their doom. As he was pulled beneath the waves, he saw the faces of those that had come before him, their lifeless eyes staring back. The sea claimed him, as it had so many others. The Abyssal sailed on, an eternal wanderer of the abyss, forever haunted by the monster of the deep.
Amidst the tranquil expanse of the ocean, where the horizon blurred into the deep blue, a solitary ship drifted aimlessly. On its deck stood Jacob, a young sailor seeking solace in the vastness of the sea. He had joined the crew to escape the chaos of the world, yearning for the quietude of the open waters. As night descended, shrouding the ship in darkness, a subtle unease settled over the crew. Jacob's eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any signs of danger, but the ocean remained eerily still, as if holding its breath. Beneath the surface, something stirred. A faint whisper, barely audible above the gentle lapping of the waves. Jacob dismissed it as a trick of the wind, but the feeling of unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of his mind. As the days passed, strange occurrences plagued the ship. Mysterious shadows darting beneath the waves, eerie whispers that echoed through the night. Jacob and the crew exchanged nervous glances, their minds filled with an unspoken dread. One night, as Jacob stood on the deck, he caught sight of something, a fleeting glimpse of a dark shape moving just beneath the surface. His heart skipped a beat as he strained to see, but the creature vanished into the depths before he could make sense of it. Fear coiled in Jacob's chest as he retreated below the deck, the memory of the creature's cold gaze haunting his dreams. But he said nothing, fearing that his crewmates would dismiss him as paranoid. As the days turned to weeks, the whispers grew louder, the shadows more pronounced. Jacob knew they were being hunted, but by what, he could not say. The tension aboard the crew reached a breaking point, each member of the crew haunted by their own private fears. And then, one fateful night, the creature revealed itself, a massive silhouette rising from the depths, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. With a deafening roar, it lunged towards the ship, its monstrous form shrouded in the darkness. Panic seized the crew as they fought desperately to defend themselves against the beast's relentless assault. Jacob's heart pounded in his chest as he stared into the creature's cold, unyielding gaze, knowing that they stood no chance against the horrors of the abyss. As the ship was dragged beneath the waves, Jacob clung to the hope that he would one day escape the clutches of the creature that lurked in the depths below. But in the heart of the sea, there is no escape. no reprieve. Only the eternal embrace of the abyss, waiting to claim all who dare venture too far from shore.
Amelia and Jack had been looking forward to their winter getaway for months. Nestled in the heart of a dense forest, the old cabin promised solitude and a much-needed escape from their hectic city lives. They arrived as the first flakes of snow began to fall, a serene blanket that quickly turned into a raging blizzard. The first night was peaceful. The fire roared in the stone hearth, casting a warm glow that pushed back shadows lurking in the corners. They laughed, shared stories, and basked in the quiet comfort of each other's company. But by the second night, the storm showed no signs of relenting. Snow piled high against the windows, and the wind howled like a mournful wail. Amelia felt a creeping unease as the hours dragged on, the isolation of the cabin pressing down on her. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. Jack looked up from his book, raising an eyebrow. "Hear what?" "A voice. Outside." Amelia strained her ears, but all she could hear was the wind's wail. "I'm sure I heard someone calling." Jack set his book aside and wrapped an arm around her. "It's just the wind. There's no one out there in this weather." But Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. That night, as they slept, she dreamt of a shadowy figure wandering through the snow, calling her name in a hoarse, desperate whisper. On the third day, they discovered the food supplies were running low. Jack decided to venture out into the shed, hoping to find something they could use. He bundled up and stepped into the blinding whiteness, leaving Amelia alone in the cabin. The minutes ticked by, stretching into hours. Amelia paced the floor as dark thoughts flooded her mind. She tried calling out to Jack, but her voice was swallowed by the storm. She couldn't bear it any longer, and she pulled her coat on and ventured outside. The cold was a vicious beast, biting at her cheeks and numbing her fingers. She stumbled through the deep snow, calling for Jack. Finally, she reached the shed, only to find it empty. Panic set in as she realized he was gone. Fear rooted her to the spot, but she forced herself to take a step back. Just then, she saw something in the snow. A splash of red. Her heart raced as she followed the trail, leading her to a horrifying sight. Jack's body lay crumpled in the snow, eyes wide and lifeless, his chest torn open by massive claws. Amelia stifled a scream, tears streaming down her face as she dropped to her knees beside him. A noise broke her from her tragic trance. As she scanned the horizon, she saw it. A hulking figure standing at the edge of the trees, just barely visible through the swirling snow. It was tall and covered in thick, matted fur, with glowing eyes that pierced through the flurry. The creature let out a low, guttural growl, its eyes locking onto hers. Amelia's mind raced, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her legs felt like lead. The monster stepped closer, its massive form looming over her. Just as it reached out, a deafening crack split the air. A tree branch, heavy with snow, had snapped and fallen. Startled, the beast retreated, disappearing into the blinding storm. Amelia took her chance and fled back to the cabin, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. Inside, she bolted the door and collapsed against it, sobs racking her body. The fire had died down, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. She huddled in the corner, clutching Jack's jacket, the only piece of him she had left. The storm raged on outside, but inside, the silence was deafening. Amelia knew she couldn't stay here, but the thoughts of facing the beast again was too much to bear. She spent the night in a state of restless vigilance, every creak and groan of the old cabin setting her on edge. The morning brought a brief respite. The storm had finally begun to ease, and the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. With a heavy heart, Amelia knew she had to leave. She gathered what she could carry and prepared to make her way back to civilization. As she stepped outside, the cold air stung her lungs, and the snow crunched underfoot. Jack's body, along with the car keys he carried, were nowhere to be found. She cast one last glance at the cabin, a silent farewell to the life she and Jack had dreamed of. Determined to survive, she started her journey through the snow, every step taking her farther from the horrors she had witnessed. The forest was eerily quiet. The only sound was the crunch of her boots and the distant howl of the wind. The creature's presence lingered in her mind, but she pressed on, driven by the hope of escape. Hours later, just as she thought she could go on no further, she saw it. A plume of smoke rising in the distance, a sign of human life. With renewed determination, Amelia quickened her pace, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and relief. As she approached the source of the smoke, she found a small group of loggers, their camp nestled in a clearing. They looked up in surprise as she stumbled into their midst, her face pale and her eyes haunted. "Help," she managed to gasp before collapsing into their arms. The loggers took her in, tending to her wounds and offering her warmth and food. As she recounted her harrowing tale, their faces grew grim. "You're lucky to be alive," one of them said. "There's been stories about that creature for years. Most who see it don't make it out of those woods." Amelia nodded, the weight of her loss heavy on her heart. She knew she would never forget the monster that had taken Jack from her, but she also knew she had to keep moving forward, carrying his memory with her as she rebuilt her life. As the snow continued to fall outside, she vowed never to return to the cabin in the heart of the forest, where the shadows whispered and the monsters roamed.